Welcome to this week's edition of The Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. I'm your host, Tony Simeone, and joined as always by Dick Corbett, head coach for Notre Dame Football, Brian Kelly. Time for this week's game breakdown of the game versus Cincinnati. Coach, first drive of the game, I thought a really good drive overall. Specifically, let's talk about that 4th and 10 play to go for it. You made the decision, and a great throw by Jack Cohn to Michael Mayer.
Yeah, we were kind of in that no man's land, right? I mean, you know, we were out of field goal range, and, you know, a punt there, I thought, you know, I thought you could probably pin them, but it was early in the game, and I wanted to stay on an attack mode. That was our thought process coming out. And we had a good play call. We knew we were going to get the good matchup. It required a great throw. And Jack threw a great ball to Mike, and we were able to pick up that 4th and 10.
That drive, though, unfortunately ends with an uncharacteristic interception. At that point, just what was going through your head when that pick was made? Because it was a real momentum shifter early in the game.
Yeah, it was uncharacteristic of Jack. You know, that's you know, something that he doesn't do. He's really, really smart with the football, and you know, it's one he'd like to certainly take back.
So the defense played pretty well throughout the first half. Specifically want to highlight a play, the Clarence Lewis pass breakup, one-on-one coverage deep on the second drive of the game from Cincinnati. He made a big play for you guys in that spot.
Yeah, and that's what we were expecting. You know, Ritter can throw the ball deep, and we felt like two things. Ritter throwing the ball deep and him running. And the running hurt us, especially in the red zone where, you know, he was able to set up a couple of scores. But the deep ball, and that hurt us too later. So the two things that we needed to take away, I thought Ritter was able to throw the ball pretty well down the field. But in this particular play that you pointed out, Silu was in good position to make the pass breakup.
So you brought in Tyler Buckner at one point. A tough interception there, gave them really good field position to get the first score of the game. Then the muffed kickoff return. Just those two miscues at that time. Again, that's not something we've seen from your team this year. So what was going through your head when those plays took place?
Well, the one with Buckner, you know, we wish we had that back over. We probably put him in a tough spot there. 3rd down, you know, some exotic coverages. You know, probably, you know, if we're going to look back on that, you know, I can't put that on Buckner as much as, you know, maybe we put him in a better situation next time. You know, Chris Tyree makes that catch 99,000 out of 100,000. It's just one of those things that happens. And, you know, you go back and you look at all the little things that he does, and he's very, very focused and detailed in his work. You know, you probably won't ever see that happen again. But it happened, and the great part about it is our defense bowed up and kept them to 3, and that was a really big stop for our defense.
Yeah, defense came up big there, held them to 3. Seemed like that was what they did throughout the entire first half. They did give up the touchdown late to make it 17-0. I thought Cincinnati did a great job in that 2-minute drill. So you go into the locker room down 17-0. What was the message? Because the team came out really strong, I thought, in the third quarter.
Yeah, I told them, look, let's not even think about the scoreboard as much as how we play and how we want to be looked at in this second half. And I said, you know, nobody's going to, you know, give up the rope. We're gonna battle here. We're going to play tough. We're fighting Irish, and that's how we're going to play. And we did. We fought. We obviously dug ourselves too big of a hole where we almost had to be perfect, and you can never be perfect in this game. And, you know, we got it back to 17-13. We missed the extra point, and then we just couldn't make the stop that we needed to. But again, you know, I think when you look at it, you know, when you get down 17 points to a good football team, the number 7th ranked team in the country, you know, that's a pretty big hole to climb out of.
Let's highlight a couple of those plays that got you back in the game. Isaiah Foskey, big strip sack. He's just made such great strides this year. What did you like from him on that play? But in general, now, you know, with this team, he's played really well. What have you liked from him all season?
I think probably, you know, his grit. You know, he's had a shoulder injury. He's bounced back from that. He's playing with a, you know, I think just a little bit of an edge, you know, where he wants to be regarded as, you know, one of those top pass rushers that we've had here at Notre Dame. I just love his maturity and his toughness as the season's gone on.
Offense got the ball back, down 17-7, and Drew Pine orchestrated another great drive, 8 plays, 80 yards. But the throw to Braden Lenzy, to see him make that big catch, that really got the crowd into it. Yeah. Big spot for your team in that moment.
No doubt. I mean, we needed to win some one-on-one matchups. That was one that we had set up as a double move on the outside, and Lenzy just used his speed. The ball was put in a pretty good position, too. It was outside from the DB, which allowed Lenzy to turn back and get the football. But as you mentioned, just a big play at that time to get us some momentum.
You mentioned that the defense just couldn't get that last stop at the end. Cincinnati probably had their best drive when they were up 17-13 to make it the 2-score game. Just what did you take away from that drive where your defense was just unable to even just keep them to 3 to keep it at a 1-score game?
Yeah, execution in some key areas in zone coverage. We weren't able to cover his seam route one time. The other time, the ball gets outside our defense. Some really fundamental issues that we got to do better job coaching, and put our kids in a good position where they can make those plays moving forward.
This is something a lot of people on this team have not experienced, right? Losing at home. It's been over 4 years. So I'm just curious what the locker room was like and what the message was at the end of the game.
Yeah, again, I think all of our guys were disappointed in the loss. There's nobody that doesn't feel that they have some kind of part in that. But I think at the end of the day, you got to take stock and look at how this game is played. They prepared very well, but your performance still matters. And if you beat yourself, those are the ones that are really difficult to come back from. And I think this one probably lingered a little longer because we gave Cincinnati a lot of life.
Coach, thanks. You're listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com. Welcome back to The Brian Kelly Show. It's time for this week's installment of Irish Intel, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for Irish Intel, where we go inside the play. Coach, let's look at this play. Big play from your defense at this point. Really started some momentum at 17-0. Isaiah Foskey with a big strip sack.
Yeah, we're playing some zone coverage here, and I think it caused Ritter to kind of hold the ball a little bit. But Isaiah Foskey gets a great get off here into the short field here. We're bringing in the inside backer, which again forces Ritter now to move his feet. But you can see we're in a zone, a deep zone with Hamilton off the hash, and he never even feels Foskey until the very end, and I think that's what makes this play. Gets around the end here, he's looking, double pumps once, and it's just really too late now for him to make a play.
All right, Coach, this is the first touchdown of the game. Kyron Williams gets to pay dirt on a 1st and goal.
Yeah, they're in a gap defense. You can see they're trying to cancel out all the gaps. We're running our duo play, which is we're trying to double team, but because of that, we have to wash everything down, and when we do so, you can see all the gaps cancel out, and once that happens, this becomes a bounce play where it now becomes Kyron one-on-one on the outside against the inside linebacker here, because Avery does a great job taking care of the corner, and once he bounces, he's got the speed to get to the pylon. So good execution. This is why that play is really good on the goal line, because if you cancel all the gaps, and which they did in this instance, it becomes a bounce play and a play that's effective to the end line.
So just to clarify, is this a play where Kyron has the option to run behind his offensive line, but he elects to bounce it out and he makes that call himself?
Yeah, and again, because it's a goal line defense, you can see everybody blocks down, and once this thing gets all blocked down, he knows that this is immediately a bounce play for him.
Okay, Coach, this is the second touchdown of the game. Braden Lenzy, 32-yarder. Great to see him get into the end zone. Great throw from Drew Pine as well.
Yeah, and we're going to make sure we get the ball out here. You can see we're in a 2 tight end set, so we're actually in an 8-man protection. Normal protection is 6. We're in an 8-man protection because we're going to get this ball down the field. And being in a 2 tight end set is going to force them to be in man-free coverage. So we get the one-on-one on the outside. You can see the protection here. We do get beat here by the tight end, but we get great help by Chris Tyree, and it allows him, obviously, Drew Pine now, to just get out there and throw the football down the field. And that's what we were looking for in this play. The ball's thrown just a little bit outside and behind the defensive back, which allows Braden to go up and make a good catch and really give us some momentum in the game.
It's now time for our look ahead segment. And as always, we are joined by Bill Reese. Bill, as always, thanks for taking the time. Of course, coming off the first loss of the year, when you think about it, first loss in over 4 years at home for Notre Dame speaks to how good the Irish have been recently at home. But when you evaluate how they played this past Saturday, what stuck out and what were maybe the areas they can improve on most going forward?
Well, the game, certainly we didn't play to our standard, and, we just did some things that uncharacteristically that has not been a part of our DNA. And, we turned the ball over. We just made some mistakes that we just hadn't been doing in the past. And, give Cincinnati credit. They were ready to play. They made plays when they had the opportunity to make them. They played hard and came away with the victory. But we got to look at ourselves, and there's certainly a lot of areas of improvement that we can make. And I'm sure it'll show up this Saturday night down in Blacksburg.
It'll be fun to take a look at that team, I think, on Saturday in Blacksburg. We'll preview the Hokies in a second. Still want to focus on a few of the positives, though, that I saw this past weekend against Cincinnati. You know, we've checked in now pretty much for a month, and it seems like the defense continues to improve. You know, the 24 points, they were dealt some tough hands with some tough field position after a couple of those giveaways in the opening half. I thought they still really performed quite well overall, generically, and the defense as a whole. What are you seeing from them that continues to grow under Marcus Freeman in his first season?
Well, there was no question they were dealt a tough hand with some of the field position, the starting position on a couple of those drives, and held them to 10 points. And that was certainly huge at that point of the game. They've really done a nice job of playing with confidence, playing with a real aggressive style to them. It's like anything else. You get more comfortable the longer you're in a new system, and it's really shown up. The defensive front has really grown. Some of the younger players that have really shown up there, that have had opportunities to play over the last couple of weeks, they've really done a really nice job. And in the back end, we're still playing some young players, guys that haven't played a lot at the corner. We're rotating safeties in, but guys have really stepped up. They know their roles, and you can see the defense coming together.
One guy on the front I wanted to highlight was Isaiah Foskey. Of course, he had the big strip sack that at the time was a huge momentum play with Notre Dame trailing by 3 scores. It really flipped the game, and for a while it could be the game-changing play. But his development, I think, has been really impressive. What have you seen from him specifically that's enabled him to keep taking steps and progressing as a player?
I think his understanding of just how to play defense, and this is a new defensive structure, but his understanding of how to do things and what they're asking him to do, that translates into him being a more confident player. Physically, there really are no holes in his play. He can do just about anything. He can run, change direction. He's explosive. He's a very complete player, just in terms of what he brings physically. Now that he has such a good understanding of what is going on defense and what he's being asked to do, you're seeing big play after big play each and every week. He's been a huge impact player for us.
I know that and you mentioned earlier, the standard at Notre Dame is, of course, they expect to win every game and contend for championships. But in the second half, even though it was in a losing effort, I thought the way the team responded to being down 17-0, the way they came out, Drew Pine was in at quarterback and orchestrated some big drives from the offense to really fight back the way they did. What were the things that you took away from that were positives the offense can build on going into Virginia Tech?
Well, I really thought the offense was really in an attack mode, really from the beginning. The first drive didn't end up the way we wanted it to, but really put together some good momentum there early. And they came out with it in the second half. They knew they had to climb back in it. They knew they had to concentrate, and really did a nice job of, getting up and down the field. Drew Pine was certainly a spark when he got in there. He made some really nice plays. So I think they take that to heart, saying, hey, we can't let these things hold us back. We've got to attack. And that's what they did in the second half. And Kyron Williams made some really nice plays and really nice run down on the goal line. So we'll bring that into Virginia Tech this week.
You mentioned Kyron Williams. He had the big touchdown. I also wanted to highlight the other touchdown play from Braden Lenzy, who's someone who I think Notre Dame fans keep looking for those big explosive plays. And he turned one in that I think was maybe one of his better plays of his career here. Just what have you seen from him? And when he's involved offensively, what kind of dynamic does that add to Notre Dame's offense to be more, I guess, multifaceted going forward?
Well, Braden has improved every week, and it may not go noticed quite as much, but when you watch him practice and you watch the games, he's getting open. His speed is a huge factor, And I think this was really a confidence builder for him to come down with that ball in the end zone. It was a 50-50 ball, and he did a great job of wrestling the ball away from the defender. I think he's going to continue to build on what he's done. And like I said, he's gotten better every week. Hasn't always shown up on, in the stats column, but he's becoming a real weapon for us.
Nobody wants to lose, but I have to say that to me, in my time here, one of the most, I would say, inflection points during Notre Dame football was the Georgia game at home in 2017. It seems like ever since that loss, Notre Dame has gone on this incredible run. I'm just curious, as a program, when there is a loss, how much focus is there on how to respond properly to a loss to springboard yourself onto a similar kind of run that we saw in 2017? Because it just seems like that's, you can really take a lot away from a loss.
Well, there's no question you can. And I think the point of emphasis this week is we're going to continue to stick to our process, continue to stick to the things that have made us successful, and continue to concentrate on those critical traits that make us a consistent and winning program.
All right, let's look a little bit at Virginia Tech specifically first. Before we even get into the team, I want to ask about that environment down there. There was so much hype. These teams have not met a ton in their history, but when Notre Dame went down to Blacksburg in 2018, the environment there is special. It's going to be a night game. How much focus is there during the week onto how to prepare to play in such a hostile environment?
Well, we've been there before in terms of being there in 2018. We experienced some things very similar down in Tallahassee in the opener. Not quite as raucous as we'll see in Blacksburg, but we've already begun to go over it with the team, and they'll get a feel for just how loud it can be. No one in the stands ever comes out and makes a tackle or does anything of that nature. So we just got to concentrate on us, do what we do well, and focus on one play at a time.
Justin Fuente is in his sixth season there. Anytime you see a coach in their sixth season, it means they've really had a chance to get their players in, get their program going in the direction they want to. When you look at what he's put together in Blacksburg, what are the things that his teams create as far as issues possibly when you're going up against a Justin Fuente coach team?
Well, one thing he inherited was great defense and a lunch pail mentality that has been a part of that program for years. And defensively, they play with an edge, they play with speed, they play with quickness. And in some spots, they're undersized, but they make up for it with just a relentless attitude. They run to the ball. They're talented, but they have such a defensive mindset down there that you really have to be ready for it, because they're going to really play hard. He's an offensive coach by trade, and he's brought in some really innovative things offensively. He's playing with Burmeister, who's a dual threat quarterback transfer from Oregon. So they have a lot of wrinkles for him, running around, throwing the ball from a lot of different launch points. He's a very innovative coach, and, has done a good job, obviously, at Tech.
You mentioned Burmeister and some of his strengths, but what can Notre Dame fans expect from him specifically? Sounds like they'll move him around a little bit. His completion percentage is a little bit above 60%, so he's fairly efficient. What kind of threat does he pose to Notre Dame on Saturday night?
Well, he's a dual threat, and he is a fast runner. He can scramble, make positive yards. They'll have designed runs for him to get him out on the edge. And he's fearless. He's a tough guy, and throws very well, like I said, from a lot of different spots. He can drop back in the pocket. They can roll him out. They sprint him out at times. So he's been really productive for them. They would want, I'm sure, more from the run game if they can create some more for that in this game. So there's a lot of things to defend with him and the entire offense.
You mentioned the running game. Jalen Holston, Raheem Blackshear have kind of split time there and can both do some damage, but you said they want more from them. So how do you think they might try to get them involved and get them activated in the running game?
Well, whether it's on designed runs or like in Blackshear's case, he's an extremely productive receiver on swings, screens, bubbles, things of that nature, just to get him out in space. And Holston is a good inside runner. He's about 215. So that's a good complement for both of those guys, for using both of those guys. So my guess is they're going to emphasize what they do well and try to, get them more involved in the game.
In the passing game, Trey Turner sticks out as their leading receiver. Of course, last week, Alec Pierce had a big game for Cincinnati, some big catches. What can Notre Dame do to prevent Turner from maybe catching some of those big chunk plays that Pierce had last week?
Well, Turner's very experienced. He's a really good route runner, and he's got good speed. So they're going to try to use him at all levels of the field. And their other receiver, Tavion Robinson, who's also their punt returner, gives them, similar skills from the slot. So those two guys are really very dangerous. They like I said, they're both very experienced and they're both very talented and both have really good speed.
You mentioned that Justin Fuente inherited a great defense. Just specifically, as far as playmakers that you guys have earmarked that fans might see on Saturday, who are some of the key guys that might stick out for the Hokies?
Well, they've got two good defensive ends in Garbutt and Barno. They do a real nice job of getting up the field, creating havoc. And their two inside linebackers, Tisdale and Dax Hollyfield, have played a lot of football, particularly Hollyfield. And they're both guys that can blitz, that can cover. They'll bring them a lot of different ways. So those four rushers really give them a multitude of ways of getting pressure on the quarterback.
Last piece I have about Virginia Tech. When I think of Virginia Tech, I think of Beamer ball and special teams. Is that DNA still there? Is special teams still a third factor they can really throw at you? What can Notre Dame fans expect from them in the special teams game?
Well, just as their defense has been a trademark for them, the Beamer ball and special teams has been dynamite for them each and every year. They really emphasize it. They work on it. They love blocking kicks. They're going to come after us, I'm sure. That's just part of their makeup. But that has not gone away. They're sound in all three phases, and especially with the tradition of Beamer ball and blocking kicks.
Well, Bill, as always, we appreciate you taking the time. We're looking forward to some primetime Notre Dame football against Virginia Tech and looking forward to the Irish getting back on their winning track.
Well, we're looking forward to it too. So keep our fingers crossed.
Thanks, Bill. Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's edition of Irishography. So, Myron, you guys lost for the first time in 26 games at home this past weekend. I'm just curious, for you as a captain and a leader on this team, what was the response like after the game, and what's the team's mindset now going forward?
Yeah, coming into the locker room after the game, it was definitely a bitter taste. The guys just understood that we beat ourselves out there, and we just got to come back to the drawing boards and just pick it back up.
There's plenty still at stake next week against Virginia Tech. What's going to be the biggest key this week as you guys prepare to go into a really hostile environment?
I think one of the biggest key this week is just coming into this week and understanding that we don't want to have that feeling ever again, and just really got to trust in our process, honing on the details, and just execute our game plan.
I want to ask about this defense now, about a month under Marcus Freeman. It's a new scheme. You guys have really been playing well, though, in that scheme. What are some of the things you've enjoyed about playing with Marcus Freeman, and where do you think the defense has really evolved in the first month?
The versatility. It allows guys to move around and play in different spots, and so we give a lot of different looks, so we're pretty versatile in that way, and it's just been fun, really, having amazing coaches and teammates that we just go out there and play for one another, and then that's just the biggest thing. And I think one of the biggest reasons why you see this defense flying around.
Let's go back maybe 5-6 years ago, before you came to Notre Dame. As you were making your decision, if you can think back to that time, what was it about Notre Dame that drew you to come to South Bend?
It's hard to explain. It's just, I feel like the moment you step on campus at Notre Dame as a recruit, it's just a different feeling, a different vibe, and only those who really come out here and experience this place can really understand.
I've heard a lot of people say, you're not going to come to Notre Dame and change Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to change you. What is maybe a change you've seen Notre Dame have on you?
I definitely want to say I've matured more as a person. The life lessons that I've learned here, I'll take with me forever.
For you personally, the last couple months have obviously been difficult. I just want to know, how has the team supported you? How has this community supported you during this time?
Yeah, even though the past few months have been difficult, my teammates and staff, as well as the Notre Dame community, they've all been reaching out to me, always checking up on me, and just the love that they surround me with just keeps me in good spirits.
As you reflect on your time here, now that you're in your 5th year, I'm just curious, what are the moments, what are the things that come to mind when you think about your experience at Notre Dame that you'll take with you beyond this place?
As I reflect on my time here, I think the biggest thing I'll take away is the relationships I've made here. Just a lot of people full of class and respect that you don't meet anywhere else. I feel like the Notre Dame community and the relationships I've built here are something that will last forever and that I'll cherish forever.
There's plenty of season left. You're a captain, a leader of this team. I know you mentioned not wanting to have that taste in your mouth again. So what will you do as a leader of this team to ensure that the rest of the season goes the way you guys want it to?
Just being the best leader I can be, motivating the guys when I feel like they're discouraged, and really just loving one another more than ever. A lot of people are probably going to turn their backs on us for the rest of the season, but you know what? It's all about the guys in the locker room. So,
Myron, thanks for the time.
Of course.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's final check-in.
Hi, Brian. On one hand, you'd probably like to start a veteran quarterback this weekend in a hostile environment, and on the other hand, you'd probably like somebody a little bit more mobile versus Virginia Tech's aggressive defense. I wonder how you weighed those varied factors in determining a starter as early as Monday or Sunday. Then my second question is, what was Notre Dame's response to Kyle Hamilton's claim about what the ref said to him in the Cincinnati game?
Yeah, those were part of the factors. I think going on the road and the environment that we're in was a factor. Mobility is a bit of a factor. It needed to be evaluated. And then, certainly, grading out. And, I think from our, overall perspective, what of the guys, who gives us the best chance to win. This is still about winning football games. And so when we added all those things up, that's how we came up with the decision. But all those are accurate, that they needed to be considered. We heard about the claim. We didn't pursue it per se. We felt like if there was something that the ACC wanted to address, that they would get back with us.
John Finneran, you're up next.
Brian, working off of Tim's questions, I guess I should ask, are you probably going to keep your quarterback secret until Saturday?
Yeah, we just feel like at this point, John, we'll let it roll out when we get out on the field, and kind of go from there. The guys know we've been practicing, all week. So at this point, I think we'll just, and I don't think it's going to be a big surprise. Virginia Tech's, seeing all three of these guys play.
Tim O'Malley, you're up next.
Hey, Coach, just one quick question. One, sorry, gets a little more involved. The status of Michael Mayer now has gone through a few practices. And also we had a chance to talk to some walk-ons on Tuesday. One we didn't speak with was Adam Shibley, who by all counts, it seems like he has won 4 starting jobs on special teams. What did he show you, and what does it take for a walk-on to beat out scholarship players at so many positions? Is that it seems rare that someone would beat out that many scholarship players across the board on special teams.
Michael Mayer, we've added his workload. And when I say workload, I mean in terms of what we want him to do for us, because we're managing him so we can get him to Saturday so he can play at the level that he's capable of playing at. So we've done a little bit each day. We'll do a little bit more today in the red zone with him and in third down, which are, obviously key components to his effectiveness for us. So it's been a good progression for us. And, we feel pretty optimistic that he's going to be able to help us on Saturday. Shibley is, I know you use the term, walk on, and he is a walk on, but he's much more mature. He's a veteran guy. He played a lot, and he comes to us a lot more physically mature in that the position in which he's playing is it requires somebody that has played a lot of football, which he has. So you're right in that he has to be, a bit unique relative to the walk-on position that he beats out some scholarship players, but he's beating out young guys that at those particular positions. So he's not beating out Prince Collie at a position. He's not beating out, our top freshmen at positions, but he is extremely valuable to us. So I just want to temper it a little bit in that he's a veteran, he's an older guy who's had, college experience. And we're so pleased that he's in our program because he's helped us a lot.
Eric Hansen, you're up next.
Hey, Brian, I got two very unrelated questions. The first one has to do with Kevin Bauman. I think his initial prognosis was 6 weeks. I wonder if you remain on track with that timeline. And then my second question has to do with a story that's been kind of circulating involving some former players, former linemen going to Harry Hiestand for some outside coaching. From my understanding, it being an off-season thing like what maybe your quarterbacks would do or anything. But just in fairness to Harry and to your offensive staff, I just wanted to get clarity on what that situation was.
Kevin Bauman is making really good progress. He's out of the boot. He's walking. His progress is again, it's bone growth, and he's been on the bone stem. He's done everything. We're going to be in that timeline. We're approaching, a pretty critical phase here right now in terms of we start to do some more work. As long as we don't have any stress reactions to that, we feel like we're going to be right on target for Kevin. So it's a positive thing. Regarding our former players, Harry, obviously still lives in town, and those guys needed somebody because they stayed locally, and Harry, obviously with his availability, train those guys. We can't do it here. Our offensive line coach, Jeff Quinn's not available to train, nor is any offensive staff or defensive staff training guys that are moving on to the NFL. So it was really fortunate that with these guys having apartments that are still under lease through the draft, that they were able to come back here. And with Harry being in town, it worked out great that they were able to hook up with him and get some and an experienced offensive line coach that coached in the NFL and here at Notre Dame to get some work. So we're all for it. We're happy for them that they were able to get that kind of training, but it's not something that college coaches can do for guys that move on after they've graduated. We're embroiled in recruiting and doing other things. So just a good situation all around that he's still in town here and he was available to work with those guys.
Patrick Engel, you're up next.
Brian, real quick on Joe Wilkins. I know you mentioned he was having an MRI on Monday. I'm curious what you learned on that and the extent of his injury.
Yeah, he tore his MCL, so he'll be lost for the season.
John Bryce, you're up next.
Hey, Brian, two questions here. My first one would be, how have you seen, as the defense has continued to evolve week after week, how have you seen Marcus's demeanor help with that and just the way that he relates to his players?
Well, I think he's got a great relationship with his players. I think, anytime a new coach comes in, I think it's about developing relationships, which he began that process in the spring and, continues to build that, throughout the season. And it's about consistency. It's about relationships. It's about trust. It's about our process and delivering it consistently on a week-to-week basis. So, I sit in all of the team meetings on defense and get a chance to listen to him talk to the entire unit, and he's on point. There's a good esprit de corps. There's great camaraderie. There's really good morale, and we're still building. This is we're just about at the halfway point of year one with Marcus Freeman leading this defense. Stay tuned. There's going to be some good stuff to follow.
As a reminder to the media, if you have a question, please use the raised hand function. We'll go next to Pete Sampson.
Brian, I was interested after Cam Hart sort of stacked up performances against Wisconsin and Cincinnati, if you sort of see a different player in practice now, just from a confidence perspective. And then my other question was just to stick with one quarterback this weekend. Is that sort of still your focus? Like that's an important part of it. And if that's the case, does that sort of rule out, Tyler Buchner getting a series in the first half and a series in the second half? Because that sort of runs antithetical to sticking with one guy.
Pete, it's unmistakable that confidence grows with making plays. And I've always said that in my career, that the best way to grow confidence is through playmaking. And he made some plays, but he did that sequentially with the teaching of a practice and how that laid out. And so I think that builds trust with position coaches, and that carries itself, to a day-to-day kind of building of what we're teaching. And now you can trust that teaching onto the field. So I think they're all kind of linked together. And there's no question that he's now taking that onto the field and playing with more confidence. I think, what I was saying more than anything else, it was important to really rally behind one quarterback, but it doesn't take the opportunity for us to be, multiple. If we feel like Tyler Buchner can add to, what we're doing as a part of our offense. I don't want to call him a wildcat because he's not. He can do much more, but offenses use that as part of their established offensive structure. So we need an established singular offensive structure, but if we feel like we need to add to it to be better at moving the football, I wouldn't say Tyler Buchner's out of the options of playing in any game this year.
Tim Priester, you're up next.
Brian, the status of Carmody and Baker at left tackle, and then also Heinisch at the nose.
Heinisch is in. Baker was cleared to play. Carmody has been practicing. So Carmody, Baker, Alt, and Quinn Carroll are all options for us, as well as Josh Lugg. So you're looking at, 5 guys for 2 positions.
Circle back to Eric Hansen. Go ahead.
Real quick one on Jordan Bateau. I know that he had a really good game a couple games ago. Didn't see a lot of action in the last game. I wondered if that was injury related or just kind of a schematic thing with Jordan and what your expectation is going forward with him.
Yeah, Eric, it was much more schematic, in terms of where he fit against the heavy personnel of Wisconsin. he's still in a competitive battle for playing time at that Viper position with, Isaiah and Justin. So he's doing a nice job. He's making really good progress. He's part of our different packages, in particular on third down. But that was much more schematic relative to their heavy packages that we wanted to match personnel. That's why you got a much more Jordan Bateau against Wisconsin.
Patrick Engel is up next.
Patrick went home.
No, he's good.
I'm here. Brian, when you look at both the Mike and rover positions where you have a couple of guys rotating in there, I guess how important do you feel like it is to eventually try to get to that spot with JD to get him some rest? And how close do you think Prince Collie is to potentially being that guy?
I think it's crucial. I think it's absolutely crucial that we get JD, some strategic time off the field, right? We want to pick our spots. It's the same thing with Kyle Hamilton. We've got to be really cognizant of the amount of plays, and time and place is important too, right? I don't want to be without these guys in key third down situations where we are on the field, red zone, things of that nature. But we got to take some of the reps off of them. We're, as you mentioned, we're in a pretty good place at the rover position with Kaiser and Pryor. We're in a pretty good position with, White and Bow, and obviously at the defensive line position, we can rotate in, 3 corners. This is an issue that needs to continue to be worked at, and we're at it. Yeah, we realize it, and we're trying to come up with better solutions.
All right, we'll wrap it up with John Bryce.
Thanks, Matt. Brian, I wanted to ask you something a little bit about recruiting, just with more guys enrolling at mid-year as true freshmen or the onset of the transfer portal and grad transfers. How have you seen the roles evolve and change, maybe for like Aaron and Bill and Dave Poloquin? And then what have you seen Chad Bowden and Dre Brown specifically bring to your recruiting efforts?
They're the, all of the guys that you mentioned, play a pivotal role in the recruiting, whether it be on recruiting weekends. We had a huge one against Cincinnati. The organization, Mackenzie Zanow, who does our on-campus. Mackenzie does an incredible job. So, there's so many pieces to this. It's such a large organization right now. And there's so many moving pieces, from Bo, who works in our digital media, Riley Fagman, who handles things on a day-to-day basis with our recruiting staff and ambassadors. You mentioned Bill Reese and DP, Aaron Kearney. There's just so many guys that are involved in this. But I will point out that Chad and Dre, they kind of keep things together for us while we're on the field recruiting. They're recruiting, during those practice hours. They're on the phone with recruits. They're talking to them, staying in touch, while we're, preparing our football team. So it's this high touch, high contact that's required now. You can't have these lapses where you're not heard from for, 2 or 3 days or a couple of weeks. There has to be this high contact all the time. And that's what our staff is doing a really good job of. And they're keeping us on task. I get a text list every morning, in terms of what texts I need to get out. So it's a pretty deep organizational goal that everybody has in mind in terms of, making sure that recruiting continues to stay at its best during the season as well.
Welcome back to the Brian Kelly Show, presented by TireRack.com. It's now time for this week's Look Ahead, where we highlight Notre Dame's upcoming opponent. Time to wrap things up. Coach, we talked about it, but this loss against Cincinnati ended a really long streak, an impressive streak at home at Notre Dame Stadium. How do you now start a new streak with this team going forward at home?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because the last time we lost a regular season game was against Michigan, and the next week we played Virginia Tech. So, how we turned our season around in that year was beating Virginia Tech and then winning 16 consecutive regular season games. So feels like deja vu all over again, and that, you know, you got to turn the page sooner or later, and you got to go back to trusting the work that you put in, your process and your preparation, and we'll do that, and we have done that, and that'll get us ready for the next one.
How do you communicate then the importance of this game at Virginia Tech, going into a really hostile environment, but last time you went there, you guys handled it really well. It's going to be something new for a lot of these players.
Yeah,
too.
We'll address the environment. We'll show videos and the sound of Enter Sandman, which is a big deal. We'll get them used to that, similar to when we went to Florida State, you know, with that environment. So we'll handle the environment. Then it's about preparing and playing, and it's, you know, the game is the game. It's no bigger than last week or next week. So our guys understand that. It's just we'll get them to stay in their best zone by taking away the distractions of all the things that are around them.
There's always a lot of emphasis about teams coming off of a bye week. I'm curious though, how do you coach a team going into the bye week? Is there any chance guys could be looking ahead? What will you do to make sure that the focus is on that game?
Well, when you come off a loss like we just had, I don't know that there's too much of a worry about looking ahead. You're probably worried about it if you're still winning. Our guys will be focused. They're really wanting to change the way they feel about you know, last week's game. So their focus will be on Virginia Tech.
Coach, as always, appreciate the time. We'll talk to you after the bye week.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You have been listening to The Brian Kelly Show, presented by the experts at TireRack.com.